I put two links in the
I'll
notes,
open it.
and one of them is just the hill.com, which is the high level description. I think there's multiple interesting things to comment about here. And there's similarities to in kind of some of the things that I want to talk about with regards to the California Age Appropriate Design Code Act and the fast food bill.
So
Screen share.
California passes bill requiring social media companies to consider children's mental health. AB 2273, 75 to 0 vote. Hmm.
Man, there's so many different angles to take this. I feel like one angle is the angle from a parent, right? Like, and man, Tim talked about this on a recent podcast. That was where he was kind of arguing with Libby a little bit. Libby was basically expressing the sentiment that, man, it's tough to be a parent these days, you know. And then Tim's like, well, nobody said parenting is easy. You chose to be a parent, you know. And I feel like Tim's stance was a bit, it's a bit idealistic. It's definitely a stance that I relate to and kind of mostly agree with. But I feel like you do also need to put yourself in the shoes of a parent and kind of like what kind of struggles are they experiencing. I mean, after all, we do want to encourage families and people to have kids, right? So if we make parenting too difficult, then nobody's going to want to be a parent anymore.
Right. And then you just have
Yeah.
to import your labor from elsewhere,
Yeah.
which, contains its own problems.
Yeah. It's going to become like this
Well, so the
well,
Hill article is super vague. Can you be more specific about what this means? It just means better privacy settings or what?
yeah, for the most part, okay, so that's why I also I linked the actually the Hill links the bill to their credit.
I'm not sure I want to read through a bill, but it's
Oh no, no,
pretty
no, no.
short.
It's actually pretty short. Okay. So
Collecting personal info.
yeah, so if you read this, most of this is about, I would say it's about privacy and sort of data protection, right? And
Yeah.
some of it is about it's putting the onus on social media companies to basically figure out if there's anything that is there anything about their product that could be potentially harmful to children and reporting on that, basically, right?
Okay.
But the thing that I wanted to, I guess, highlight first, which is something that I learned from you, actually. There's this one part A of something. Okay, 1798.99.32, right? This is something I learned from you. It says the California Children's Data Protection Working Group is hereby created to deliver a report to the legislature pursuant to Subdivision E regarding best practices for the implementation of this title. So the working group shall consist of Californians with expertise in at least two of the following areas, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
The working group shall select a chair and a vice chair from among its members and shall consist of the following 10 members, two appointees by the governor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing that I don't remember what context or what we were talking about one time, but we were talking about some news and you highlighted that the gist of the bill actually was it created this committee or organization or something. It brought it to life, right? And then you get into all the issues with these government agencies, right?
Oh, yeah. So are you
Well,
just basically talking about how the point of a lot of legislature is to increase the size of government?
yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yes, it is.
yeah.
It is. And they like to say, oh no, the point is to protect kids. But in order to do that, it's necessary to create a whole new, whatever, 10, 20, 1,000 new jobs in this organization to do X.
Yep.
Um,
And this
I,
is actually,
you can
and this is
believe them,
why,
but I sort of don't believe them anymore.
yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so coincidental byproduct of a lot of these things is, oh look, more people who need to work for the government.
Yeah.
Another organization that needs to exist.
Yep. Also, just the shift in power, right?
Right,
And then,
more people are now stakeholders in the government, in the bureaucracy, right? They will tend to vote that way. That's their meal ticket, after all, right?
mhm. and then
It's really
once
a self-perpetuating thing, isn't it?
and then once you create this thing, this entity, it really has no incentive to do a good job, really. Instead, it's actually incentivized to basically expand their power and also, to grow in size and to expand their power and reach. I would say are actual incentives. How are they incentivized to do a good job?
Well, it's not the
There is,
private sector, so there's none.
yeah,
There's none.
there
You
is
you
none.
you have to rely on people's good intentions, which I don't know if you are an avid student of history or you've read literally any literature in your life, is not a good thing to depend on because human intentions are all over the place and usually self-serving. And yeah, that's what that's the fundamental and most persuasive argument against bureaucracy, which is that you're constantly increasing the size and influence and budget of people and entities that really have no built-in incentive structure, right? Like in the private sector, you have a built-in incentive structure. You either do well, you either please your customers, or you die and you're out of job. You don't make money and you lose money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a built-in incentive structure. But the incentive structure for bureaucracies is just to make sure that the people vote for them still, right?
Yep.
And you can say, well, people won't vote for it if you don't do a good job. Okay, but what if the people who depend on it are also a bunch of the voters? Now they didn't get that loophole now, did they? Right? They didn't get that loophole. So now these people get to vote to perpetuate their own largesse, right? If you're
Yeah.
a worthless government worker and you know that your department really isn't that useful, will you vote against? Will you vote for a bunch of cuts that put your own livelihood in jeopardy? Of course not. And if you know that, or even if you work tangentially in like a private industry, but it's heavily reliant on certain subsidies or certain aspects of this bureaucratic largesse, you'll still vote for it because it's in your self-interest. And so it's just like a beast that perpetuates itself. It doesn't have any sort of accountability or check or incentive structure. Well, it does have an incentive structure, but it's one that doesn't really serve the public. It only
Why
serves the
is
people
it?
that work there.
Why is it? Do you think that it seems like the left just totally does not understand the
Oh,
idea
they
of
understand it.
incentives?
You're not giving them enough credit. They understand it. They're just working with it. They understand
I'm.
it.
I guess I'm thinking. Well, I'm not thinking about the politicians themselves, but what about just like your typical progressive voter? They're not. Why is it that they're not thinking about incentives at all? Really, they just think the way a progressive voter would analyze this is they would think, um, do
Well,
do children
here's the
need
thing.
protection?
Here's the thing. A lot
Do
of
children need protection from social media? Yes or
yes.
no?
So
Yes,
therefore,
yes.
this thing should
Therefore,
exist. Right.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
The way I, and this is such a blanket statement, so it's not fair, of course, but in general, I would say that people on the left, they are lacking in the real world experience that would inform them of these things. They either have been insulated by just working in a bureaucracy, they haven't had to, bootstrap a business up. They don't have to face these sort of realities,
Hmm.
where incentive structures matter. They can just write plans out and get their budget funded from someone above them. Like there are very few, almost zero, I would say, people who work for the bureaucracy who have to think, what value do I add or can produce that will make the average customer or audience fund whatever it is I want to do? Like it's great for you to want this, that, and the other. I want to protect kids. I want to help the homeless. I want to do this. Whatever it is you want to do. But they don't have to think about their stakeholder is never a customer, right? Their stakeholder is never some customer who actually has to put money in your hand to continue funding this thing. The stakeholder is always just your boss. It's always just somebody who gives you that money. So you just have to convince the person above you. And that's just how bureaucracy is. A bureaucracy, and at the very top of it, you could say, well, doesn't the ultimate stakeholder, like the governor, isn't that person accountable to the voters? And I would say not really, because they're just so far removed at that point. There's just so many layers, and so many of them are entrenched that, and the way people view, and this kind of retraces to what we were talking about with student loans. The way people view the California government, the federal government, it's just so much different than the way they view McDonald's, right? When the government tells you, "Hey, we need to tax you for X program," you don't think, "What is the real value I'm getting? Am I getting what's the bang for the buck on this thing that you're proposing?" No, a lot of people just give the government like too much credit for having their best interests at heart, for being altruistic and saying, "Oh yeah, the government said that this is what's good for us. So, yeah, okay. I guess it's okay to be taxed for this thing." Whereas if McDonald's told you, "Hey, give me $100," you'd say, "Why? What the hell do you need $100 for?" And they'd say, "To protect kids." Well, maybe you'd give it to them, but you sure as hell would be a lot more demanding of McDonald's to show you that they can produce results for whatever money you gave them, right? And I just think that that attitude, a lot of people are just so forgiving or naive, you could say, about what the government is. The government is just an entity taking your money and promising to do something with it. And if a private business did that, you would be pretty demanding about them producing results. But when the government does it, there's so much more forgiveness and
It,
just leeway that you afford them.
it's just so weird. Like, where does this trust in government come from? And I don't think it's necessarily just being sheltered because I was very sheltered, and right now I have very little confidence in the government.
Well,
Um,
trust in authority. A lot of people have an implicit trust in authority, which
right.
I
I
don't
had
know
that
that.
too.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily just inherently bad. I think it's okay to have some trust in authority. I think that society would be a lot messier if nobody trusted authority at all. It'd be closer to anarchy. But people who have power, a lot of them these days, or maybe always, tend to abuse that trust, implicit trust people have in authority. And you see the consequences. Things like government large S, fat, just making programs. You know, if this were a private business, it would be like creating a superfluous department so your dumb nephew can run it, right? That's how I view this thing. I view it no different than nepotism. Like some rich guy runs a company and he just like creates a pointless job so his stupid son-in-law can have a job. Well, this is just the state of California creating like a bunch of stupid son-in-law jobs. That's the way I view it. And probably half the people who work for the state are stupid son-in-laws. That's the way I feel.
So, who do you think actually is going to benefit from this social media privacy thing?
Um, I, yeah, I don't want to just assume that it'll have no impact. Maybe it will, benefit children. I don't know.
I don't see how this benefits children at all, really. It's
Probably
yeah, a
doesn't.
bunch of yeah, I think to comment intelligently on that, I would have to know more about sort of existing laws around
Right. I mean,
data and
I just
privacy.
read the bill. I don't want to just assume, oh, hey, that's going to have no impact. Maybe it'll have a bit of an impact. Maybe have it a lot. I don't. It doesn't seem to do much just from a cursory reading of it. I hope that they're not hiring too many people to be this new department. But
Like I was thinking about who benefits, and the only okay, I can only really think of two groups. One is the the members of that committee that gets created, and the other are the developers that Meta, whatever, Facebook, Google are going to have to hire in order to make sure their systems are compliant with these new rules. So it's like,
hmm,
that's why like I almost see this as an example of, I feel like this can't be the case,
hmm,
but it almost seems like this is an example of the left eating the left a little bit
right.
because yeah, because I mean this is sort of it's anti social media, but then Facebook, Google are California social media companies,
Well, there's based on what I can read here, there's very little teeth to this bill. So,
Except there is that $2,500 penalty,
yeah, but
which
who assesses it though? And those people are probably in the pockets of Zuck and all those people. It's will it
well,
ever be assessed?
I guess the committee would be the ones.
Yeah, but those people are all subject to whoever put them there and lobbyists, et cetera, et cetera.
So one interesting thing is I don't think this Hill article actually mentions the committee that's getting created.
No, just the positions.
What do you mean by positions?
Doesn't it say
Oh,
like it's about one person with a CS background, et cetera?
no, the Hill article doesn't talk about that
Oh,
though,
the
I
Hill
don't think.
doesn't. Right, right.
Yeah, the bill itself talks about the kind of the expertise that these committee members need to have, but I just think it's interesting that this Hill article doesn't even mention about the creation of the committee.
Well, that's boring. That's boring. Nobody even cares. The Hill is probably so used to, every single story meaning, oh yeah, yeah, this means more government jobs.
Okay. I mean, in contrast, if we talk about the fast food, the minimum wage bill,
Are we gonna get into that now then?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
That one, I think the Wall Street Journal at least mentions right up front that it's gonna create some committee.
Yeah, I believe it does. Although the Wall Street Journal writes longer articles, to be fair. The Hill writes a really short article that just is the highlights.